So one of the things that I was talking about last week, I was talking about that we are, in some ways, our experience of this life, of this moment here, is to some extent, it is coloured by what I think I described as magic, or the way we experience ourselves here and now is in part dependent on magic. So the magic I was referring to is the sense in which a conjurer or a magician will create something, some magical display for our that draws us in, that we really believe that this is a real experience. So the classic one being, when the magician saws somebody in half. Now, of course, part of us recognises that's an illusion, but actually the greater part of us is kind of in disbelief that this is happening. So I was using magic in that term, that it is that we misperceive the situation. So we are kind of caught in the magician's tricks, if you like, recognizing that this, as we're experiencing now, is actually something which we are creating and perpetuating. Unfortunately, if you didn't already know, probably all of us aren't experiencing life as it really is. This that we are all experiencing completely individually. There's no common experience here. We're all knowing this experience completely independently, filtering it through what I refer to as these illusory aspects of our mind that is creating all this. Now, we're not saying just like the magician's illusions. It's not that there's nothing here. Of course there's something here. It's just that we're misinterpreting. We're kind of building what I described last week. Again, a point of clarification. Last week I was talking about stories, that we tend to create a story around our experience. Now, a story suggests that there's some narrative, there's words, there's language being used to understand our experience. And that's usually associated with the mind. But we also know this experience somatically through the body. And many of us, that's our primary way of knowing our experience. So we feel experience, we kind of know it on a cellular level. And that is also, that creates certain habitual ways of interpreting experience. Those kind of cellular responses tend to be, or often are, learned responses. So we're working with both the story-making capacity of our mind and trying to unpick that to some extent, or certainly to understand more fully what that process is happening, but also trying to feel into the body to recognize that actually part of our experience is a felt experience, and some of our interpretation around the felt experiences are probably more to do with the past than this current moment. So if this is your first night, this part of this evening, I hope that's not confusing you, and I hope that it will all become clearer as we go through the evening. So I'm going to be using a set of slides to try to communicate this session tonight. So last week I was talking about this idea of poisons, that you could describe the spiritual life as the transformation of poisons into wisdom. This is one way of looking, one way of describing the spiritual life. So the reason they're described as poisons is because they are veiling our perception, our knowing of this current situation. So the magician is at play. The magician is creating what we're describing as poisons. So these poisons, I just want to kind of clarify that they're not inherently right or wrong. They're not inherently good or evil. Poison sometimes has this connotation or connections with something that's wrong or bad, but actually that's not the way we're using it. I'm using this term in this context, in this series. So it's more about the fact that these qualities of mind, qualities of knowing, are affecting how we see this, how we experience and relate to all this. Also, I want to honour the fact that those learned patterns of being, learned patterns of responses, have protected us, have served us well historically. So we don't want to just ditch them and kind of step into something completely raw and, in fact, unknowable. And we wouldn't be able to do that anyway. It's just not within our being to be able to move from a state of being bound by habit, by being bound in views, being bound in habitual ways of knowing the world, to move in one step from there to a liberated perspective, to an enlightened state of being. We have to work on a path. So the whole path could be described as this process of transforming the poisons into wisdom. So hopefully this won't come as a surprise to you, but we are all bound by our compulsive views. We are bound by our unconscious views. We're dragging all this material around with us, and a lot of the time that isn't visible to us. Just check, is that your experience? I'm hoping it's not just me, and I'm assuming it's not just me, and the Buddhist tradition suggests it's not just me. But is that something you know in your experience? Can you see how you go into a situation, you're feeling all kind of open and available, and then somebody says something, somebody does something, and you just this kind of completely kind of out of your control. There's just a response immediately present. Yeah. Yeah. That is how it is. And so what we're trying to do in Buddhist practice is trying to open that territory, become familiar with it, really start to recognize that these perceptions are formed over the whole of our life, and they are creating how we perceive the world and how we perceive ourselves. So going back to what I said right at the beginning, all this you'll be experiencing completely uniquely. It's like if you're told a story and then you're asked to recount or respond to the story. Probably if every one of us will pick out a very particular point in the story that fits our own experience, that fits our own kind of knowing. And that's how it is. So we're not judging that, we're just trying to say, can we recognize this is happening? This is trying to unpick this process of recognizing we're bound by our views, bound by our habitual responses, both in the mind and in the body, unpicking that and seeing what is there when we're starting to loosen all that is the path of transformation. So, jumping forward, when to give you, I've got a fantastic image to share with you. Do I share it now? No, I think I'll hold back on that. I'll give it to you in a moment. So what I'm mainly going to be talking about tonight is something called the Wheel of Life. Now, the Wheel of Life is a very complex, rich image, and as I'm saying on this slide here, much of what the Wheel of Life is pointing to is that we are trying to find something that is permanent, that is substantial, ongoing, and leads to a constant flow of pleasure. So this is the dream that we are caught by, and we are trying to move, so we're trying to create those conditions through our kind of habitual ways of responding and kind of engaging with our life. We're trying to find this imagined solid ground. So just to lead you through this little circle very quickly. Oh, I forgot I've got a little pointer.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't used it yet, so I don't know whether it even works.
Andrew, could you stand outside so we can see?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I'll just stand like this. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So we have this whole circle of kind of how we create our experience and we recreate our experience. I won't give you the technical term for this. I'll just suggest that you can look up all about this much more fully in a book by Sangharakshita called The Three Jewels, and within it he describes the Wheel of Life and this whole process of becoming, of conditioned arising and passing. But the first thing to start with is that all of us, all of the time, we're having feelings arising. Because we're in this body, we have this capacity to feel, to sense experience. So we have felt experience of the body, we've got visual input, sensory input, we can hear things, we can smell things, taste things, and of course we can create thoughts, we can create sensations through the mind. So we are kind of embedded in feeling, and those feelings are completely alongside feeling, we move to a response. Now, most of the time those responses are habitual, as I say, unconscious. We move from feeling to a response about them. And that response, over time, the more we circle around this cycle of feeling to response, what we do then is that we start to gather up these poisons of deluded views and responses, deluded views and reactions. So we are gradually creating these ruts of habitual being. We kind of know the world in a very particular way, and we then start to look into the environment and inside ourselves for things which confirm that view. So if I think nobody understands a word of what I'm saying, and I look out into the room, I can find in all your expressions kind of, what the hell's he talking about? So I have to work against that habit of kind of feeling misunderstood, kind of not understood, to sort of step through that. But that is the rut of habitual being that I inhabit. That's one of many, and we all have our own. So this rut of habitual being is broken often because of the reality of impermanence. So, as we all know, we get ill, those around us get ill, there's death, there's a loss of relationship. Often these things break us open into a new way of, we suddenly see things afresh. That can also come through seeing, having a real opening into beauty, into kind of a sense of, through art, through nature, we kind of open into something which is outside of our normal patterning of our life. But there's something shocks us. And that, through that, we lose this sense of our habits for a moment, and we open into new experience. And unfortunately, most of our habits are held at a very deep level in our being. We are embodied in this human life, and it seems that our habits are really held at quite a cellular level. So even though we might think our ways out of particular ways of being, unfortunately, a lot of the time we're kind of locked into this cellular response. So we blindly become again and again a similar person. So when we go to bed at night, we wake up in the morning and we assume we're the same person. And actually, we've had dreams, we've had all these experiences in our dream state, and yet we recreate in our waking, we come back into this familiar sense of, this is who I am. We reach for our toothbrush, which happens to be in the same place. It's amazing. Anyway, these things, these habits of being, kind of support our blind becoming. And what they really support is this sense that we are separate. We have a separate selfhood, a separate ongoing selfhood that we attempt in our various ways to maintain, to kind of keep safe, keep permanent. So as I say, we recreate this sense of self ongoingly, moment to moment. And that sense of self experiences these feelings, and because we are habitual beings, we tend to respond in similar ways, and that similar ways kind of compounds our ways of being. And unless we do something about it, we will continue to cycle on and on. So this is the delightful message of Buddhism, that actually, unless we bring attention to this cyclical nature of being, we will continue to move through life to life in this state of experiencing the suffering that comes from trying to move away from the fact that things are impermanent and insubstantial, and that actually we are completely interwoven with all life. So this is the work, this is the task that Buddhism invites us into. So, I thought I'd just illustrate it with a couple of little short stories. Like a story, I'm sure. So, the first story comes from, I think it's a Zen tradition, but wherever it comes from, I'm going to tell it to you. So there is a fisherman's assistant, very poor, survives and gets fed enough food to survive on, and they are allowed to sleep under the chopping block where they spend their day preparing the caught fish that have been landed that day. And every day this person goes to the temple and prays to the Buddha, please take me, carry me out of this desperately unhappy situation. All I'm doing with my life is chopping up fish, eating kind of this gruel and sleeping under this disgusting table for the night. So, as I say, they go to the temple day in, day out. And on one occasion, as they're praying to the Buddhas, they open their eyes and find themselves in a completely different realm. They've been transported to a palace, and all around them there are people. And what would you like? Here, have a perfumed bath, dress in these beautiful clothes. Here's all this beautiful food for you. Here's this fantastically soft, gloriously comfortable bed. Please take what you want, and anything else you wish for, just tell us. So initially the person thinks this is great, but as the night wears on, they're lying in this deliciously luxurious bed, and they just cannot rest. And they're tossing and turning, and eventually they ask one of their servants, please find me a fish basket. The fish basket is brought. They get the fish basket, they put it over their head and crawl under the nearest table and go to sleep. So this is us. We have this potentiality of finding ourselves, creating a whole new world for ourselves, but our habits tend to sort of draw us back into known territory. We recreate that territory over and over because it makes us feel safe. And we can, in our own kind of way, we can relax, even in our discomfort. At least it's a discomfort that is familiar to us. And this, unfortunately, is much of how we spend our life. So, I'm going to say something of my own experience, just because I thought it might be where last week I felt for myself, it felt a bit abstract. It was kind of, so I was just sort of grounded a bit in my own experience. So I was on quite a long retreat in a meditation centre in North Wales, and been meditating. It's probably into my 7th day of this retreat, and on the retreat, which was mostly in silence, and we were meditating probably 5 or 6 hours a day, we were sitting there and we were being invited to sort of explore these deeper states, higher states of consciousness, and we were being shown how to do it, and it was all apparently great. But I couldn't do it because this person in the shrine room was breathing so heavily. As soon as I started to get a bit concentrated, his breath would kick off and just drive me absolutely bananas. And so I spent most of my meditation practice wishing that this person was not on the retreat. If he wasn't there, I'd be having a great time. I'd be in these kind of blissful states. But unfortunately, he was there. It was all his fault. And whilst I was in the midst of one of these kind of tirades, is it? Against this poor innocent person, I heard outside the window a robin was making a racket, protecting its territory outside the shrine window. And the contrast was so kind of stark that I could hear this robin, which I was really appreciating. It was just sound, and this poor guy just having a bit of a hard time breathing. And I just kind of, in that moment, I heard really for the first time in my life the harshness of my internal voice. That voice that was just so judgmental and critical of parts of my experience. And I could see that each time, although it was kind of landing on the breather, actually it was more to do with my own experience. That as I was dropping deeper down into myself, the way I protected myself was this voice of criticism and judgment was kicking in quite unconsciously, and just cutting at my experience, particularly the kind of experience it around the heart. So I was sitting there just really feeling the kind of the cuts of this voice that I recognise with an ancient voice, but still very much alive and playing out in my life. So during that retreat, what I did was I imagined a sheath that I hung around my neck, and each time I heard that voice, I put the knife into the sheath, and in that way I was able to begin to start to work with that patterning of my harsh critic. So it's a very tangible way of starting to bring attention, bring consciousness to a pattern, and starting to kind of imaginatively, creatively engage with the reality of my experience. So this is what we can do. We can either be blindly sort of led by our habits and our seeking of stability and permanence, or we can begin to explore our experience and try to engage with our experience in a way that begins to at least bring some kind of possibility, some potential for beginning to release from our internal rolling narrative or rolling sense experience. So this is the time now where I'm going to hand out a load of images for you. So I know there's enough for one each. So if I could have these back at the end, so don't scribble, do what we're going to do. We're just here to help you.
Do you want me to have some?
Thank you. If you could just pass the one, that would be great. That's...
Thank you.
Okay, so the image that is coming round to you is called the Wheel of Life. So on this image, you'll see that there's an outer rim to it, which describes in more detail, or it kind of gives you this sense of the different, this pattern of conditions, moving conditions, and that, I'm not going to say any more about that tonight, but also you'll see that within that outer white circle, there's different images, different pictures, which point to these particular qualities that I'm describing as poisons. So what they're pointing to, and I'll describe and explain it as we go through. So what they are describing is these 6 poisons: greed, hatred, delusion, attachment, envy, and addiction. So in Buddhist psychology, of course, there are an infinite number of ways that we create, establish, and maintain these poisons. So this is an illustration of these 6 probably very familiar areas of our experience. We can identify probably all of these at some time in our experience. So this isn't supposed to be a kind of conclusive description of our poisons, but it's trying to indicate certainly the familiar territory of the poisons and how they manifest as a lived experience. So we can see this image, which is described or is named the Wheel of Life or Wheel of Becoming, and we can see it as a map for experience, or we can gaze into it like a mirror. So we can gaze into this and discover, oh my God, this is how I am. This is me. This is what my experience is. So we need to unpack the image a bit. And I say that it's hopefully will give you some sense of what this image is pointing to. So this is just an overview of a similar image. If you Google Wheel of Life, you'll come up with infinite numbers of images. They've all got their own kind of particular character, depending on at what time in history they were created and who the kind of particular lineage that they're involved in. But there will be many similarities. So what I'd invite you to do to begin with is see if you can locate on the diagram the animal realm. I probably should have one of these images myself.
Yes.
So in the animal realm, we tend to be fairly happy as long as we get food, shelter and sex. If we have those, then most of the time we're happy, and we are driven by those needs for those parts of experience. If we find those in our life, if we create those in our life, then in some ways we don't need to search any further. So this realm, the animal realm, tends to be have quite a limited perspective. We are bound by habits that are trying to create as much, to give us as much sense of, a sense of having a free access to food, and to have a safe structure, a safe place to sort of play, safe environment, and of course we have the drive for sex. So these are the kind of drivers of this particular realm, and we are greedy for those experiences at the expense of looking more broadly out into the world. And also in this realm, of course, we will be looking through the lens of wanting more of those things which we think brings us a sense of well-being, happiness, contentment. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. We will be coming back to them, so you will have a chance to see them. But tonight, I just want to sort of, in a way, just name them all so that we've got a starting point for these different realms. So we've got some understanding of this working of the mirror. So we have the animal realm, and then we have the hell realm. So in the hell realm, as you can see in this picture, and yes, on the one you've got in front of you as well, we have what are called the hot hells and the cold hells. But they're both driven by hatred, really. So when we are driven by hatred, as we may know, that hatred tends to burn us up, or we become completely cold and clinical about our hatred for this being that just has to be destroyed, annihilated. I'm probably, again, try not to reveal too much about myself and the realm I inhabit most of the time. But, so the hell realm is deeply painful, because unfortunately the hatred that we have for another or parts of our own experience creates this extreme level of pain within us. and we become consumed by that hatred. So this is the hell realm, and just as in the Christian tradition, quite a lot of images make quite a lot of the hell realm and all that goes on there. But this is one way of describing hatred. The consequence of being driven by hatred is that we find ourselves in these fiery or icy regions of being. Right at the other end of the spectrum, we have the Deva realm, or the God realm. So this is pictured at the top left of your image. And this is said to be a very delightful realm to land in some ways. Because the thing about the God realm, or the Deva realm, is that anything that you wish for simply appears spontaneously. So everything, in a way you could say that was similar to the fisherman's assistant. They kind of find themselves in this realm where anything they wish for simply appears. And unfortunately, the beings in this realm imagine that they are eternal. So these devas, because everything is so pleasurable and delightful, they get lost in this sense of that it will always be this way, that life continues in this ongoing flow of ease and comfort. But unfortunately, all of these realms are created by our conditions, the conditions that we are creating. So these habitual ways of being that we build over lifetimes. So the devas in this realm, these beings, don't recognize that this is a conditioned state and that they too are prey to conditions. So eventually they begin to find themselves that the world around them isn't doing as they wish. They start to fall out of the Deva realm into one of the other realms. And it's said to be one of the most painful experiences to move from a state where one imagined oneself eternal and that everything would always be as it is now, delightful, comfortable, pleasurable. We find ourselves falling out of this realm. So there's a sense that in the Deva realm we're simply deluded by our present state of contentment and ease. We don't recognise how impermanent and insubstantial it actually is. Now you will see in this top image here, there's a figure playing a musical instrument. I haven't got time to explain all of them, but I think this one's particularly interesting in that in this realm it's said that the beings in this realm are supported to come into full awareness through the music of impermanence. So they are played, they are sung to the songs of impermanence to remind them that this too will pass. So this is quite well, it brings in a whole another layer to the meaning of this wheel of life. That within all these realms there are these other forces which are trying to move us into awareness. And we'll say more about that when we come to looking at the wisdoms. But I just thought I'd mention that one, just to whet your appetite for these further unveiling of this image. So here we are. So this should be on the image. It will be the next one round to the left on the that is the human realm. And in the human realm, Well, one of the interesting things about our realm, or the realm of humans, I'm making an assumption we're in the human realm, but actually, as we probably know, I've just been describing with some feeling the hell realm. All of these realms actually manifest here and now. They're not somewhere else. They're a response to our the way we're perceiving the world. So in the human realm, it's said that we have a mixture of pain and pleasure, and this is said to be quite helpful in terms of moving out of our habitual ways of being. If we were in a state of discomfort and pain all the time, we wouldn't really have the capacity to investigate our experience. But because we have moments, periods of ease, spaciousness, we have this opportunity to really explore our experience. So the human realm is said to be quite a helpful realm when we begin this path of transformation. And so in the human realm we have agriculture, we have sciences, the arts, we have family life, we have commercial life. All of these things seem to be part of the human condition. And all of those are fantastic. They can be real expressions of care and kindness and generosity, etc. But what tends to happen is that we become attached or identified with particular aspects of our experience. So we might get identified in our role, we might get identified within our romantic relationship, within our family system. We will become attached to particular ways of being within the human realm. And it's that attachment that binds us to the wheel, which we are working to bring awareness to our attachment. So the next realm I want to talk about is the top right hand side this time. So you can see there's a tree there. Is it just me? I'm standing right next to the radio. Is it quite hot in here?
Yes.
Would you like to just go out and turn the heating? Just turn it off for now and I'll sort it out. I can see some of you struggling to stay awake with the heat. It's there's certainly some red faces. Good. Not everybody's experiencing it that way. So let's go to the Ashara realm, also called the Titan realm. And what this is, the main part of this picture, which I think sort of draw your attention to, is that in this realm there is what's called the tree of knowledge. And the beings in this realm are trying to hack at the tree, trying to cut it down so that they can grab at the fruit, which is actually fruiting in the Deva realm. So they're trying, the Asharas are actively trying, through force, trying to gather the fruits of skillful action. And they're in this realm, as you can see, there's often war, there's strong polarizations amongst the Asharas. So there's strong attractions but also revulsions. So we create division, we create countries at war with each other, etc. So the Ashara realm is one of striving and trying to force our will onto the inner and external environment. And we're trying to gather that which we want through force. The hungry ghost. This is to be found in this, on your picture, it's on the left. bottom left. So, so in this realm, what happens to the beings in this realm is that they are looking to get satisfaction and nourishment from things which cannot nourish them. So we are attracted, we're drawn to sense experiences that we think will meet and will fill this great hole, this experience of lack in our being. And we try to fill that with various sense experiences. And unfortunately, the deeper we go into these addictive patterns of response and behaviour, that which we grasp after becomes less and less nourishing. In fact, to take in that which we think we need leads to extreme suffering. So the picture of this realm, or the beings in this realm, usually got these dreadfully distended stomachs and pinhole mouths, and they are trying to force nourishment into their pinhole mouths, but as soon as it enters their mouth, it either turns to fire, blades, or excrement. So it's a pretty distressing realm to find oneself in. But probably, in some ways, we know this experience. We know how we are reaching for something to fill this sense of lack, sense of absence. We think that thing will give us some sort of ease, and initially maybe it does even. It gives us that kind of comfort. But if we keep repeating that same experience over time, it becomes less satisfying, less nourishing, and actually starts to become deeply unsatisfying. But it's very hard then to release from that addictive pattern. So it's a very painful place to find oneself in. But again, I imagine, in small or great ways, it's not that unfamiliar to us. So just a recap of these different realms and the poisons associated with them. So the hell realms, these both hot and cold realms, are kind of defined by or created by the mental poisons of hatred. The human realm, the attachment, the preta, or the hungry ghost realm, through cravings and addiction. The ashuras. I realise, where's greed? Where's the animal realm? I missed it off, I'm sorry. I'm sure you would have noticed. But, so these are the different realms. So the last one which I have missed off is actually the animal realm, which is based in greed. So these are the mental poisons creating our world, creating this mirror that we have in front of us, through which we can look into and recognise where we find ourselves in our life.